way, I did not edit this last part, the front and the end off of the last show because the holidays have been so bad. So,
Oof.
all right, go ahead and count down from 10, and I'll be quiet. Go ahead and start.
10, 9, 8.
Quiet on the last 2.
7, 5, 4, 3. And welcome once again to a slightly hiatus version of Recording in Progress, where we slow things down and get them all recorded so we have a moment to progress. So this is our special end of 2019 episode at the start of 2020. And with me, as always, is Mr. Jim DeJesus. How are you doing, DeJesus?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
And who's this nappy-headed hoe who's on the screen right now?
We have a couple of deaths to talk about since we've been away for quite a while. One of which is the legendary talk radio show host Don Imus, who
was once famously put on a list of 10 men who look like lesbians.
Is that real? Is this real life?
That was a real thing that happened to Don Imus. It was something that he actually talked about on his show.
Oh, goddamn Howard Stern. But so I hate this guy. And not like I'm not glad that he's dead. I mean, whatever. He's just a jerk, and he's just gone now. But he been kind of gone for a while. If you want to know why he's a jerk, it has nothing to do with that nappy-headed hose thing. I thought that was just unfortunate. But if you want to know why he's a complete sleazebag, check out this wonderful movie called Private Parts, starring Howard Stern.
Or check out the book Private Parts, also by Howard Stern.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. And we also learned about his friend Pigfucker.
Yeah.
And who else passed away? Danny I don't know how to pronounce
Danny Aiello, legendary character actor, known for such great things as the hello scene in Godfather 2, Once Upon a Time in America, The Purple Rose of Cairo, Moonstruck, which is where I think was his first major break, Harlem Nights, Jacob's Ladder, which was another big one for him, Predator, Lucky Number 11. He played Madonna's father in the 1986 award-winning Papa Don't Preach video. And his most recent film was 2017's The Neighborhood. He was in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing
but
as the pizza owner, yeah.
And most importantly, he was in Hudson Hawk.
Yeah, which was a great movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
I think Jim and I both like a lot of. And he's somebody who gives you hope if you're in your 30s or 40s and you haven't quite gotten things right in your life. He was a late bloomer. Aiello didn't start out to be an actor. In fact, he didn't even start out acting until he was in his 30s. And his first movie role came when he was 40. He served in the U.S. Army for 3 years, came home, got a job as a bus driver. He found his rising career serving as president of the Amalgamated Transit Union when he lost his job and his life pivoted. He found a gig working as a bouncer at a New York comedy club, the Improv. His acting career grew out of occasional stints emceeing at the club, where he was seen by the right person, playwright Louis LaRusso II, who gave him a role in the Broadway play Lamppost Reunion. Aiello moved from the stage to the screen in his 1973 film debut, Bang the Drums Slowly. And, he passed away like on the 13th, it looks like. And Jim and I are going to do a much better job with important celebrity deaths that would benefit our show. So this time next year, we'll have a whole list of dead people to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could pull up the list, but we've covered most of them. I was going to the list. I was like, we got it. Yeah. When they died. So when they were fresh, when the bodies were still ripe. Yeah. All right. Are you ready?
So,
is your body ready? You got to type.
Yes. So we're going to start with reviews as opposed to ending with them because the big money shot for today is the list.
Oh yeah, money shot.
So I watched a great TV series called The Witcher. So The Witcher is based off of a series of books and based off of a series of video games. And the entire show was made better by Henry Cavill. So in the books, in the video games, the main character talks a whole lot because, it's a fantasy story and there's a lot of exposition that you need to have to, talk about stuff. Henry Cavill is such a great actor. He expresses more with grunts and disapproving glances than most people do with speaking lines. Also, he was so extremely buff, he kept breaking his leather armor for his character during the show. It
Really?
just kept breaking under the strain of his fantastic muscles. It's an excellent show, and it's also an excellent show because it takes a lot of themes involved in modern media, very contemporary intersectional feminist themes, and it presents them in the movie. But it's not annoying. It's not in your face. It's there. It impacts the story, and it's still good because the writers who did this weren't hacks about it. And when they realized what a great job Henry was doing as an actor, they kind of shifted the writing to basically highlight everything he was bringing to the picture. This is clearly a role of a lifetime level of acting performance for Henry Cavill. I'm going to be very interested to see if the second Witcher can live up to that. And the second Witcher is supposed to catch the story up to where the first game is what I believe I've heard. So definitely watch The Witcher. It's a good show. You know what else is a good show? Jim hasn't finished watching it, so we're going to not go into too much detail about it, but The Mandalorian. And I canceled my Disney Plus subscription with The Mandalorian ended because this is the way. So The Mandalorian was a great show. Set up a very basic Star Wars tone, very basic Star Wars theme, used stuff that's been well established by multiple creatives, had good actors doing a good job. And it, like The Witcher, also did a good job of teasing we're at the 8th episode of the streaming series, so it's over, but it's not really over. So definitely, if you have Disney Plus, check out The Mandalorian. If you don't, check and see if your public library has a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
They may have that. But I think it's important that Disney gets the message of people all canceling the Disney Plus because there's no Mandalorian. And by the way, The Witcher became a more popular streaming series than The Mandalorian once it was released. So it's very fascinating. And nobody's canceling their Netflix because there's always something on Netflix. And every so often, that something is good.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff on Disney Plus, but it's all
If you have kids.
yeah.
But let's hop in back to Netflix. You remember Michael Bay?
Unfortunately,
You remember the kind of dumb, fun 90s action movies he had where plot was kind of a contrivance there. It's kind of like the plot of a pornography.
You mean like Pearl Harbor?
Exactly like Pearl Harbor. Exactly. So the plot is just there for all the stuff you're actually there to watch the movie for. So the basic premise of this is a rich billionaire decides, I'm going to overthrow a Middle Eastern tyrant. Do we know why he's going to overthrow him? No. Why would we need to have that? He has a very vague thing of like, he was there when he did a poison gas attack on a refugee camp that this dictator ordered. But, the guy then goes to the point of, faking his own death and setting up a team of unaccountable, privately funded secret agents who've all faked their own death, who decide they're going to take out this dictator. It's a fun, dumb action movie starring Ryan Reynolds, and it's largely carried on his charisma. This movie would not have made it in theaters, however, because there's Ryan Reynolds. He's your draw in this movie. And it's an ensemble action piece, so everybody has to be doing something. So that's why this movie doesn't really work. But it's entertaining, it's fun, it's stupid. There are explosions, large military violence. And do you think Netflix advertised this a little or a lot? Or not at all?
I saw a little bit up for it.
Yeah, but basically
Not
nothing.
Oh.
So Netflix spent $150 million on this, getting this all put together, and maybe you should advertise it. Maybe you might want people to watch your movies. that you're having one of the most charismatic actors currently working starring in. I'm just saying that's a thought. But I did see a legitimately good movie at the theaters to end my 2019 movie watching. I saw Little Women. Now, it is a good movie. It's not good enough to get into the top 10 or into the honorable mentions for the year. And I got a lot of honorable mentions. I don't know how many Jim has yet, but it's based off of the book, Little Women. And it's kind of narratively structured of like, okay, the book Little Women is being written by one of the characters in the book. I don't know if that was how the book actually worked because I wasn't a chick and I didn't read that. But you know, it was a fun chick flicky kind of movie. A little bit of romance, a little bit of goofy comedy, a little bit of period piece stuff. It was all very nice. It was all very nice. There was a little tragedy there because, again, you're in a chick flick. You got to get a tragedy. You got to get a romantic reversal of fortune. It was good. It was good. It was well directed, well written. All the actors did a great job. There have been a lot of good performances this year, so I think some of these people in a different year could have maybe gotten an Academy Award nomination for their performance. But there's been a lot of really solid performances this year. But I recommend, you know, if it's January and you don't want to see The Grudge, the remake of the remake, or some of the other terrible decisions that are coming out this January, and you really want to go see a movie, go see Little Women.
There's a couple of good movies that are coming out in January. It's not going to be fuck you, it's January this January.
No, but it's mostly nothing. It's mostly kind of nothing.
Yeah.
So that's the reviews, and now we're going to start for The Piece of Resistance, the movies. So we saw a lot of movies this year. Jim actually leveled up and watched even more movies on like streaming to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jim, how about you start with your honorable mentions for best movie of the year?
I thought we were gonna do the what was it, 10 through 2, and then mention the honorable mentions. However you want to do it, it's your show. You want to do the honorable mentions first?
Well, I think we should do the honorable mentions first because
Okay.
I mean that seems to be a good way to roll with that.
All right. So the first on my list for honorable mention. By the way, these are not in order for the honorable mentions at all. Apollo 11, which is a documentary about Apollo 11 and the flight mission that went up there. I saw this while I was at work. Someone fell asleep with the TV on, and that movie popped up, and I was like, "Oh, cool!" And I watched the whole thing, and it was like fascinating. All the interesting stuff that was going on about that whole mission and what it took to get up there, and all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. It's kind of interesting. Next one on my list was Dolomite Is My Name. And fucking shit up is my motherfucking game. I can't believe Eddie Murphy is back making good movies again and not just making crap like Norbit.
So I'm going to also say that this is also on my honorable mentions for the year. Because this was a really good movie. Eddie Murphy acted his heart out. All the black actors were having a good time. A lot of them were really trying to pay respect to the cultural significance of Dolomite in the blaxploitation movies. Mm-hmm. So it was a really great movie. Watch it on Netflix. You're going to have a good time.
Yep. Then I have John Wick 3. Fortunately,
which is also on my list for honorable mentions.
Oh, for honorable mentions, yeah. It didn't make my top 10, but man, was it a whole lot of fun. There's not a whole lot of story there, but at this point for John Wick, there doesn't need to be. It just needs to be Keanu Reeves just slaying a bunch of people that are trying to kill him. That's all it needs to be. And it delivered. Next one on my list is Alita Battle Angel. I think there are some problems with this movie. It does kind of suffer from the George Lucas kind of issue where everybody needs to explain to you how they feel. They just don't express that emotion. They need to let you know that they're sad. Like the prequels did. Everybody had to verbally articulate the feelings that they had because the director didn't. Well, I guess it's because it's an anime and they just did a direct adaptation. That's probably why.
Yeah.
So I can forgive it for that. But other than that, all the action set pieces were great. The visual effects were great. Once you actually see the girl in the movie, instead of just on the trailers, you'd like you start, you start.
The eye thing doesn't bother you once you actually see her in the movie.
Right. In the trailers, I'll agree, it's kind of creepy. But in the movie, it actually worked pretty good. It's a passion piece for Cameron. So I don't think he cares about the money. So I think he's going to do
It's passion for both him and Rodriguez.
Oh, okay, so I guess they're going to do the sequel no matter what, because it's coming out of his paycheck.
It's complicated because it gets into business with Disney, and Disney wants to keep dominating the movie thing, so they would be distributing it, which means that they may not like to distribute it at the price point. But Cameron's saying, yeah, but I got all these Avatar movies that you're going to want to make a ton of money on, and
yeah, maybe they'll just release it under Miramax or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Since they probably own that out right now. Does anyone own that still? I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, and then the last on my list, again, not in any order, was Rocket Man. This was kind of a breath of fresh air when it comes to biopics because it wasn't the formula of a biopic. It took a break to be like, hey, let's turn this into like a Broadway musical. Unexpectedly, like everybody just breaks out in song and dance in the story. I thought that was interesting. Was not prepared for the gay scene. Was not prepared for the gay sex scene. Was not prepared for that.
You were not prepared for the butt stuff.
I was not prepared for the butt stuff. That was a little shocking. But other than that, the movie was great. And I'm not a big Elton John fan, so should tell you a lot about how good this movie is.
Taron Egerton's a pretty good actor. He definitely is does a good job. So what you didn't cover that's also on my honorable mention list is Pokemon Detective Pikachu.
Mm-hmm.
I had to struggle with that a little bit. I mean, it was a very basic movie. That was ultimately why it didn't make it into the top 10. And much like Six Underground, the movie was largely carried on the raw charisma of Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. I didn't like, what's his name? Jaden Smith? What was his name? Is that his name?
It could be. He wasn't a good main character.
No, he wasn't. I thought that was
Ryan Reynolds was the main character.
The story was kind of, it was kind of predictable where it was going based on the trailers, but it still was fun. But I don't think it made the.
Though I didn't finish watching it because it made me too angry to finish watching it. Richard Jewell's on here as an honorable mention because it's a very good movie showcasing the historical event that happened, and it did a very good job of tapping into my feelings of anger at the police and the FBI abusing this poor man.
That's right. I forgot that was a thing.
Yeah.
Hold on. I got one more honorable mention now. You can tell where this one was going to end up on the list, but Knives Out goes on my honorable mentions list now. It was number 10.
Oh, we're gonna so you're gonna be abused when we get to my number 10.
Okay.
Also on my list is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. It almost made it into the top 10.
Not for me. It was really good. I really enjoyed it, though.
It was really good. And Zombieland Double Tap is on the list. It was very fun, and that's what puts it in the honorable mention list. On sheer having a good time, I would put it in the top 10. And Midsommar was a very beautiful movie. I loved what it was doing, and it just didn't make the final cut for the top 10.
Yeah, it didn't make mine for the honorable mentions just because I thought it had very poor character development.
So we're going to start now with your number 10 first.
All right, so my number 10 was Jojo Rabbit, which I know you're cringing right now because you did not like this movie. Well, you didn't say you hated it, did you?
I didn't hate it, but I was not happy with it.
Yeah. So this is not the best of Taika Waititi, but I thought it was really good. I think he always delivers. I don't think I've seen anything that he's made that I haven't liked yet. So even though everything about Thor seems very bad, I have high hopes for it just because Taika Waititi is at the helm.
Thor Ragnarok was pretty good.
And I think he was the perfect person to play Hitler. I mean, it was just flawless. Probably the best adaptation of Hitler I've ever seen. Even more than, what was it, Falling?
Yeah. So because you amended your list to include Richard Jewell, was Knives Out going to be your number 10?
Yes, Knives Out was going to be my number 10.
You know what my number 10 is? Knives Out.
Okay.
So Knives Out was a very basic Agatha Christie styled locked room murder mystery script. Ryan Johnson tweaked it just a little bit around the edges to make it interesting. He made characters that were very compelling, that drew you in. Almost all of them were extremely unlikable in entertaining ways. Daniel Craig gave an amazing performance, and somebody on Twitter suggested to Ryan Johnson that every sequel movie they do with this character, Daniel Craig's character just has a more and more absurd accent in every movie. That's a different one. And I'm saying, like,
just make it thicker and thicker until, like, by episode 10, it's just going to be like, you're just like spitting, chewing tobacco. I'm down for this.
So, number 9
just have this
for
be
you.
Creole. Number 9 was Ford versus Ferrari. Holy fuck, was this movie fun?
It was a great movie. Matt Damon was amazing in that movie. Christian Bale was also amazing in that movie. And if I watched a documentary about Carroll Shelby, he really did a good job playing the British guy.
Yeah. I thought there was a couple parts where the movie dragged just a little bit. Other than that, like, the movie was a whole lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. And it was told a very good historical story, not necessarily accurately, but it was a good historical story piece.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting was at the, I'm not going to say the spoiler, but the thing that happens at the very end that's very sad, I found out actually happened in my hometown of Riverside, California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And yeah, like a lot of the famous stuff in car history, and especially race cars, happened in Southern California back then.
Yeah, it was the Riverside Raceway, which is now actually not part of Riverside anymore. It's actually in its own town called Moreno Valley, which is now a giant mall, which is about to go under, or if it hasn't already. It's been a while.
So wait. So that mall that replaced the town, you know what we could do? We could replace that mall with a town.
I'm down.
The cycle of life continues.
And then put an RC cart track in the middle of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then we can knock that down and put a replica, a little miniature.
So for my number 9, and I was kind of surprised at myself that I picked this for number 9, was Rambo Last Blood.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. And I think it gave a very visceral horror true crime approach, almost like a exploitation approach to stuff going on in the border, and it was very unapologetic about what it wanted to do. It was one of the movies that was out there trying to piss people off, and it pissed people off well. I think Stallone did a good job playing John Rambo, albeit there's not been a consistent characterization of John Rambo over 4 movies. The reason I rate this above Knives Out is because there was a lot of emotional pathos of Rambo making it all the way to the end of his journey.
I really did like the movie, but at the end of the day, I think it was kind of, there's lots of schlocky and stuff, but I think they executed on the schlock well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
what's your number 8?
So Mr. my number 8 was Richard Jewell. I think Kathy Bates carried that movie for the most part. And
I mean, there were so many great actors in that movie.
Yeah, and Sam Rockwell not only helped her carry that movie, but he also he was also pulling the rope. And surprisingly, this guy who I've never seen or heard of before, who played Richard Jewell, in fact, I don't even know his name, did an amazing job. Unfortunately, his character didn't really have much character to go on. So it's kind of like this weird thing where it's not quite like the what was it, the Disaster Artist? What was this guy, James Franco, and playing Tommy Wiseau, where he's doing a fantastic job playing a character that's weird. He's more like he's a fantastic actor who's doing a character who doesn't really have much of a character.
But he does a great job not having a character.
Yeah, he does a great job. And then once you actually see him like talking in real life, you're like, oh, he actually puts some effort into being Richard Jewell. And then you actually see Richard Jewell talk, and you're like, oh my god, he nailed it perfectly.
Yeah.
But all the other characters I think around him were really kind of driving that movie, and they all were doing a great job. And John Hamm's always great.
Yeah.
He's
So my number 8 was The Irishman.
oh.
And I kind of struggled with this one because it was good. And I finally come to terms with the ending because the ending's the whole movie. It's about, your life going from being a young man to, getting to becoming a mature adult who's actually, knows what to do with his life and achieving something, and then having that all taken away as you slide into old age and obsolescence, and your family abandoning you, and you're dying alone with only you and God. That movie was really good. Um, I think Joe Pesci's performance is perhaps the best of his career because it's so understated. Because we're so used to the more frenetic, short, tough guy Joe Pesci. The tough guy, but also quiet Joe Pesci does a great job selling what he needs to sell in the movie. De Niro actually gave a shit.
Yep.
It was good all around.
Yeah, I was really surprised because I saw Joe Pesci on there, and I was like, "Uh-oh, he's going to be Joe Pesci," which I don't have a problem with. I love Joe Pesci, but he wasn't Joe Pesci, and it was kind of weird seeing that version of Joe Pesci, but in a good way, and it kind of kept me invested through the whole movie. But he was just as maniacal as he was in the other films, but it was a very calm and reserved version of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There was an angry, manic nature in all of his other characters. This one, it was just very chill.
Yeah,
and that's why he was the guy that was called in to settle beefs and stuff.
All right.
So, what did you have for your number 7?
Uncut Gems.
Interesting.
This was really tense. Like the whole way through, I was just very uncomfortable. I had a lot of anxiety going through this whole entire film, and I just didn't know what was going to happen from one point to the next. The only thing that I could anticipate was something bad, and I was right in terms of it being bad, but there was no way I could guess like how bad it was going to be because he just kept surprising me with all the bad choices that he kept making in this movie, and it always kept me unnerving. And Adam Sandler gave the performance of his life. I've never seen him act so well in a film. And
I mean, it's really hard. Like leaving Las Vegas, he did a really good job. He's done a really good job in quite a few movies.
Punch Drunk Love, he did a good job in.
Love.
It's always when he's not in his own movies that it's great. By the way, he's going to be in my list for one of the worst movies I've seen this year.
Oof.
As well. Which is also interesting because there's a topic that's going to come up that's in both of my lists as well, which is kind of weird. But we'll get into that when that comes.
So let's see. That was your number 7. I actually put Dark Waters in there, and I was like,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, that was the one about the corporate defense lawyer who went out there to sue DuPont over Teflon and how pretty much everybody in the world's been poisoned by Teflon over the years. Not enough to cause medical malpractice or maladies in most people, but in certain parts of the Ohio River Valley, you're having a bad time because you're drinking liquid Teflon, which isn't good for your internal organs because it's designed to keep out water, and you're mostly made of water. That's a bad time for you. Mark Ruffalo gave an excellent performance. Some of the key people from the story, the real life story, did good job with cameos. It was a very good dramatized bit of history.
Nice.
So what'd you get for your number 6?
Us.
That is very interesting.
Really?
Because that's also my number 6.
I'll let you talk about it then, because I've talked about that movie to death.
So Us is a very good movie for theme.
Mm-hmm.
Theme is what Us does really well. Theme drips from everything. Symbolism drips from everything.
Making sense doesn't, but it doesn't need to, because that's like the Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone's not supposed to make a lot of sense. It's supposed to be like, oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a really good movie for that. The actors all give a great performance. My biggest thing that held me back in liking that movie was the ending. The twist of the ending, I saw it coming pretty early on.
I saw it early enough on to be like, oh, I'm not in the nosebleeds, but I definitely wasn't in the front row. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That was somewhere in the
So
middle.
now we get into the really interesting part.
Oh, the top.
Number 5.
Number 5. Oh, me.
Yeah.
Once upon a time in Hollywood. Turned. Like everybody keeps complaining about how like there's no good filmmakers left except for Tarantino, and we're gonna get into it. We've already talked about a bunch of really good ones this year, and there's some that are better. But what I really did like about this is it really was explaining the problem in Hollywood, and like the origins of that problem, dating all the way back to the '60s. And kind of letting you know what it was like. Even during the heyday, there were some problems. And you can kind of see all those little problems manifesting. I thought that was kind of cool to kind of see what was going on behind the curtains. The fact that he didn't rely on CGI and it was shot on film. And he actually, like, when they were driving past all of these old places, he actually had them constructed in real life and didn't just CGI them in. I thought that was amazing, and he did a great job on that. And the whole kind of plot twist about what happens on, the alternate history of Sharon Tate was fascinating, and it was done very well. Unfortunately, it's not the first movie that tried to do an alternate ending about Sharon Tate, which I will get into. Is that going
to be on your bad list?
On my bad list, yes. This did it well. We're going to talk about one that did it very poorly.
So,
and it also was very respectful to Sharon Tate.
So my number 5 and my number 4 are movies that you've talked about, and I'm going to talk about them now. My number 5 was Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay.
I really loved the movie just because of how great a job Matt Damon played as being the larger-than-life Texan Carroll Shelby, and how you totally bought into his friendship with what's his face, who plays Batman, whose name is Christian Bale. You completely bought into their friendship right away. You were completely sold on that. The whole thing with Carroll Shelby's heart condition being used as a thematic beat point throughout the movie was also something I was very fascinated by. Let's see. And your 5 was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Mm-hmm.
Or was that
5?
So my 4 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. For all the reasons Jim said, but also Brad Pitt, I gotta think that may be his best performance in his entire career.
Ooh, even more than 7?
Yeah, even more than 7. Although 7 is the best performance he could have given at that point in his life, but the maturity and the experience and everything he brought into his life made, I think, a better performance at this point. And also the big final sequence, the flamethrower. They set up the flamethrower at the beginning. Then later we saw the flamethrower, the tool shit, and I was like going, wait, are they going to murder somebody with a flamethrower?
Yep.
Oh my god, they are going to murder somebody with a flamethrower.
He knows how to foreshadow things that are coming up very well.
It was set up beautifully.
Yes.
So your number 4, Jim.
The Irishman, for all of the reasons you just said. For exactly the same reasons you just said.
So did you see on YouTube, somebody actually used like some cheap deepfake software and actually did a better de-aging on De Niro and Pesci?
I don't care, man. The movie was 3 hours long. It was like basically doing a binge watching of a show. I allowed for some of that.
But I mean, that's something I've actually found out rather fascinating, is that the bigger end Hollywood productions aren't necessarily getting the best deep faking de-aging technology, which is kind of fascinating.
Well, we've learned that with Cats.
Oof. Cats. Ugh. That gives you a little heartburn there. So,
what's my number 3?
What's your number 3?
My number 3 was Joker.
Really?
But you're wondering why it was all the way down that list? Because I have 2 movies I thought were far better. Far better. Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix, again, delivers the role of a lifetime. Though he just came out of the movie this year, and I did not have a chance to see it. I tried to cram in as much as I could, and that was not one of them that I could cram in.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think he could top The Master, but he did. And it was kind of interesting that this movie was originally kind of written without the Joker in mind. It was only after that he was kind of like, oh yeah, this could be an interesting way to get people to come see this character, this character film.
So when we're doing the show preparation, Jim said something, and I thought, oh, you're going to do a top 10 movies of the decade list, and the first movie I wrote down for that list was The Master.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That would be my number one for this decade for sure.
So my number 3,
I thought it was a better film. Hold on, I'm just gonna say I thought it was a better film, even though the performance was better in the Joker.
Yeah,
because we also had Philip Seymour Hoffman giving a role of his lifetime as well.
So my number 3 was Uncut Gems.
Oh,
for all the reasons you said, but I also want to go into the family dynamic behind everything that was going on in the story of the horrible degenerate gambler destroying himself was really deeply fascinating. This is kind of a spoiler, but his bookie and he have a deep personal familial relationship, and it goes badly for both of them, and that's like really profoundly fascinating. And I'm a Jewish convert, and the Jewish family life in the Passover was tied in on all of these things. So there was lots of very interesting religious and spiritual symbolism interconnected with all of that. So I put that very high, and I didn't think I was going to put it this high. So what's your number 2?
You probably haven't even heard of it. It's a little movie called Shadow, which came out last year in China, but was released in the United States this year, so it's technically a 2019 movie for me.
Oh, snap.
So, this movie is a Chinese period piece. Have you heard of this?
I have not heard of this.
This is one of the most visually stunning films I have ever seen in my entire life. Most of it is it's not in black and white. It's a color film. But a lot of the scenery is in black and white. The palace that the king lives in is in black and white, which most of the movie takes place in. The outfits that they wear are all black and white. The bad people, the bad army, also wears black, white, and gray. Lots of black, white, and grays. Yin and yang symbols all over the place. But whenever there's a fight and there's like fresh blood, it's very it's very vivid red. And, and then once that injury has been kind of taken care of, or has been old enough, it kind of darkens up a bit. So it kind of loses that. So there's the way he's playing with color in this movie. I don't know who's doing it because the whole film's in Chinese.
I think it's something that's very traditional to Chinese theater and some of the theater artwork. So I'd have to watch it to see, and I'm probably going to do that now.
The vistas are beautiful, even though they're all very black, white, gray color palettes, because the whole time it's raining, and that's part of a prophecy that was also kind of fulfilled in it. And basically, it's about this commander who gets the shadow, someone who he found had an uncanny looks just like him, and he suffered an injury during a battle. And while he's trying to heal himself, he gets his kid to kind of replace him and trains him at a young age because he knew that something was going to happen, to kind of replace him and be his shadow, and go and try to get revenge on the guy who injured him badly in a fight, which leads to a war and some conflicts with the king. And it's just all kinds of just very kind of feudal Chinese war martial arts thing, and the way and also there was this really interesting weapon that they were using, which was like this umbrella made of knives that also shot knife blades out, and the way they were using those things was just visually stunning. Like the whole movie was just you're just jaw on the floor about how great this movie looks. Fantastic. So it kind of reminds me watching this reminded me a lot of watching 13 Assassins, which is another one of those foreign films that was kind of like very similar, but I thought this movie was a lot better visually.
So my number 2 movie, which I'm predicting is going to be Jim's number 1, is Lighthouse.
Yep.
because Lighthouse is an excellent piece by two actors, both at the top of their game. It's very retro in how they do the film shots, and they do it in a very excellent way to establish mood and tension and all of that. They use stuff that's kind of mythological, kind of Lovecraftian, kind of folkloric, but not really, but good enough to give it a sort of flavor on the outside edge of it. They do a very good job in the story of selling two unreliable narrators. I really enjoyed it. It's really a great piece of art. I expect it's going to be getting several Academy Awards, and I really thought it was a top-notch movie. So that is your number one movie still?
Yep.
I had to go with Joker for my number one movie still, and it's a little bit complicated because I could say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood deserves to be the number one movie. I could say Lighthouse does. I could say Ford versus Ferrari does. I could say Us does. All four of those movies have something in them to justify an argument for that. I think Joker speaks more to what we're all going through right now in 2019. And I think that is what gave me that little bit of an edge to put Joker at the top of the pile.
Okay.
So what's interesting I found is we both had Joker on our list. We both had Lighthouse. We both had Uncut Gems. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Ford versus Ferrari, Us. Basically, we were only different on 2/3
JoJo,
movies.
Richard Jewell, and Shadow.
And Dark Waters was the one I saw. So that I didn't watch Shadows, but so that was very fascinating. So now we're gonna move to the delicious trash.
No. I'm gonna go turn my air conditioner off while you.
So I did not find a whole lot of terrible movies this year. I had to struggle to get to 10. But Jim went out of his way to get a giant spoon and to spoon himself up a giant pile of trash.
Yes.
Delicious trash. So Jim, why don't you talk about your dishonorable mentions?
Do you have any dishonorable mentions? I'm sorry.
I do not. No.
Oh, okay. So I have 2 dishonorable mentions. The first one is Men in Black International. I had zero fun watching this. Everything was predictable. None of the jokes landed. Even though I like Chris Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
Yeah, I know. It's a Rich Evans joke. Even though I like him, he was unlikable in this one. I did not care about him
Tessa
at all.
Thompson's also very likable.
In most of the movies I've seen her in, I like her, but not in this one.
And Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson was the only person I thought was interesting, but he was only in it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. So this movie was a mess.
Yeah.
But there were all sorts of good elements that were supposed to be put together, but they did it all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I just felt on my personal list there were a lot more problematic and dumb things that were done in other movies. So what's next on your dishonorable mention
list? Why I didn't make my top 10 list, and you'll see why. There's some terrible stuff. X-Men Dark Phoenix.
That is my number 10.
This I probably only got like 20 minutes into this movie because I realized that nobody gave a shit about this movie, so why should I? Everybody
was butchered to hell.
Yeah. Everybody looked like they did not care. And everyone was like, this was contractually obligated, the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was almost as bad as what was going on with Holmes and Watson.
Nah. I wouldn't go that far. I would not
almost,
go that far.
But the actors at least put up more of an effort than they did in Holmes and Watson.
Well, I think that because they kind of had to, but they didn't want to. You can kind of tell, like, we just have to be here and do this. Everybody had that attitude, and it was clear.
So, do you have another dishonorable mention?
Nope, that was it. Just the 2.
So, here's why Dark Phoenix is my number 10. So, there's a lot of the X-Men franchise is kind of like, Ghostbusters and Star Wars, things that have 1 or 2 good movies and a lot of movies. But they decided we're going to focus on Mystique and on this character played by an actress that is really popular, but not really popular with the fans of the movie. And she hates playing the character that she was cast to be in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But they then decided, let's just kill her as an emotional plot beat to make the movie go forward.
That's about the time I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because she didn't look like she cared that she died either.
She was happy that she died because she didn't have to film in that makeup, what she hated. The whole movie was based on us caring about Jean Grey and Scott to some degree or another, characters that were only established in the last movie, which was a terrible decision. And it was also written by the person who ruined the adaptation of this piece of iconic comic book storytelling the last time they did this movie. And he made all of the same mistakes, but worse. And I'm like, how did none of you say, wait a minute, wasn't this the movie you made last time that everybody makes fun of you for and says is one of the worst movies you've ever made? Yes. Yes, it is.
But pay me.
Yeah, but pay me. Pay me. And like they had, Magneto say, you give a speech, nobody cares, then we get a fight. And then they got in a fight. And it's like, fuck you, movie. So what was your number 10?
Number 10 was Unicorn Store. Could you believe that it's that high up on my list?
Hold up. Hold up.
I've watched worse trash.
Unicorn Store is a dishonorable mention for me because I forgot that. Because it said it was technically 2018, but it got wide release in 2019.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that.
I figure if it was released in the United States in 2019, it counts, which means that I did not even consider what is that film? The one that came out in France. It's not released in the United States yet.
The Woody Allen one?
No. It's called the girl in the Portrait of the Girl Lady on Fire.
Yeah.
Which I started to watch and then I realized, like, wait a minute, this isn't released in the United States yet. I can't count this, so I didn't watch it.
So
I started watching it, but it started being good. But
yeah. So the Unicorn Store was racist on multiple levels, and the movie just was completely okay with being racist on multiple levels, and focusing the entire plot around the narcissistic ramblings of an undeveloped woman, mentally and emotionally undeveloped. It made fun of 20-somethings. It made fun of art students, but it acted like it was lionizing them. It was an amazing dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought it would have ranked higher on my list, but there's so many other things that are worse that have come out that I forgot it was even out this year. That's how bad these other things are. And I'm going to go with Terminator Dark Fate for my number 9.
See, I had some fun. I had some fun at certain parts of that movie. None of the other things on this list I had any fun with whatsoever.
So here's what I can say about that. There were moments in Terminator Dark Fate where there was fun, but this was again a movie that was fundamentally mismanaged by the studio,
and it made me angry.
And it made me angry, yeah.
So it did not. I'll tell you right now. I'll spoil it. It's not coming up on my list.
Actually, you know what? I actually double put something on my list, so I'm going to put Unicorn Store in at number 6.
Okay.
So, good. But yeah. So Terminator Dark Fate, they had a protagonist, but not really, that they wanted us to believe in because, Hispanic people and undocumented immigrants and stuff. But it was really Linda Hamilton. But they didn't want you to think it was Linda Hamilton. It was a very bizarre, passive-aggressive, and manipulative movie. And they killed the literal symbol of hope, whose name initials are JC, in the beginning of the movie, in a scene that, if it weren't for cats, would be one of the worst pieces of CGI I had seen all year. But then cats happened.
Okay.
But then cats happened. It's like, oh, that's not terrible enough. But yeah, and it undoes all the good of the Terminator movies, unless you just choose to believe that Terminator 2 was where this series ended, because
which it did.
That's what James Cameron always intended, but he was okay with his friends making money. So, what is your number 9?
Cats. The reason why it was so high up on my list this time is because I didn't have fun. So I mean, I was entertained at certain parts of Dark Fate, even though I was angry with the movie and all the choices that it made. There was parts of it where I was actually enjoying it for what it was trying to do. Like it tried to do something and it worked, and I enjoyed that.
Mhm.
It was very couple places, and there was more parts where I was angry with it than not. However, I was having a good time with Cats because it was so terrible. So I can't say that it's the worst movie ever because there was some level of enjoyment. There also was a level of enjoyment to go like I got to see a film that wasn't finished yet in the theater, which I have never done. That's never happened to me before. I have seen unfinished films before. I did see Casper
So
and
Cats is
and
worse on my list
hold on hold
than
on
this.
and Fast and the Furious. There was parts of it like where the CGI wasn't done yet, but I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it like like bootleg friends like, hey, I got this videotape from a guy like type of thing. It's out early. But this was
So
just bad. It was everything. All the decisions in terms of visuals was wrong. Everything else was fine. The music was fine, but except there's no plot because it's fucking cats. It's just a bunch of cats introducing themselves, which doesn't make for a good movie. Which that was the overall big problem with the movie, and then the CGI on top of that.
So Cats is worse on my list, but I just want to highlight a point that you had. There was actual DLC for a movie
Yeah.
that was in theaters. That's a thing that we've all experienced.
Yeah, which I need to go see. I need to see this DLC. I'm gonna wait for it to come out on video. We should wait and be sure that we all got the DLC before we go see it again and talk about all the differences. Yeah. But yeah.
So my number 8 movie was Hellboy. Okay. Hellboy was a movie plagued by production problems. There was a really good actor to play the character. There was a really good actor to play one of the key supporting characters, but they had no story. And they decided to adapt 3 really iconic Hellboy stories, but they did a really terrible job of doing that. They took a character that was Asian because he just happened to be Asian, and then made him an Asian British guy, and that didn't make sense. But he was originally going to be like a Hispanic guy, and it was made even less sense. They made all sorts of terrible decisions. The scripting was bad. Mila Jovovich was one of the few redeeming things in the movie because she understands how to be a camp kind of performer. So she did a good job with what she had, but she even barely had anything.
The makeup was terrible too.
The makeup was terrible too.
Yeah, like when he was sawing off the part of his horn, like you can actually see like his whole prosthetic moving around. It's like, are you kidding me? Guys, come on. Do another take. Like, what are you doing here?
So what was your number 8?
Murder Mystery starring Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston.
I wanted to watch that, but then I said, it's an Adam Sandler movie on Netflix. Maybe I shouldn't.
So he made my top 10 and my my bottom 10 in 1 year. Wow. That's a thing. So yeah, it's a murder mystery that happens on a boat. I got like 20 minutes in, and I realized like I didn't laugh one time. I just kept groaning, so I'm done. It's everything you would expect from an Adam Sandler movie. It's a little bit more mature than something like Jack and Jill, but again, it was just like, hey, I'm at the store. Do I need Claritin or Allegra? I'm going to get some Coca-Cola. It's like, come on, dude. Like, can we give up this scam already? We already know. Like, Jay and Mike already exposed this scam already. Can we just stop?
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
So next up on the cavalcade of failure, is Pet Sematary at number 7.
Oh, I did not see that.
I enjoyed the actors in the movie. They were good actors. It was fairly faithful to the Stephen King thing, but they made all sorts of choices. Instead of having the little baby be the one who died, they had like the middle school age kid be the one that died, and it ruined all the thematic beats of the movie. It was just a bunch of brutal nothing. It was one of the worst Stephen King adaptations I've seen. I can't say it was the worst because the Dark Tower movie came out, and that one was also plagued by massive production problems. So, what came in at your number 7?
Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
Wow.
There was absolutely nothing about this movie that I enjoyed.
I actually, the only reason
I take it back. There's one thing I did get a good chuckle about. There were two things. No, there was
John Williams.
Well, okay, 3 things that I liked about this movie. Okay, the first thing was the title crawl, where it was like the dead speak, because apparently Palpatine has a podcast. I gotta check this out. The other things was every time Leia was in the part, I kept seeing people saying like they did a great job like making it seem like she was really in the movie. No, they didn't. They did not. So, who you trying to fucking fool, man? It was so stupid. Like she might as well have just had like random lines, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, I think she means we need to go get the Wayfinder."
Digital necromancy is bad.
Yeah. Like she's like, hey guys, let's wrap this up and get some pizza. I think what she means by pizza is the pizza shaped Wayfinder that we have to go find. Yes, that's great thinking, Leia. Let's reuse the same hug that we used in The Force Awakens. There you go. I couldn't follow along anything that was happening because there was like 30 different things happening at once. And by the time I got to like the fourth thing, I was like, I don't care anymore. Just show me how bad this movie is going to be. I just need to know. That was it.
So since Unicorn Store snuck in at my number 6, what's your number 6?
Unplanned. I have a lot to say about this movie, so I'm
what was
only
Unplanned?
going.
I think that movie slipped my mind.
So this is a PureFlix movie. Are you familiar with PureFlix? They gave us great, wonderful films like God's Not Dead and God's Not Dead 2.
Ugh.
It's a Christian film about abortion. I'm just going to talk about the first 14 minutes to give you an idea about how bad this movie is, because this was a draft script that they were like, fuck it, we'll make it. Like, it's really that bad. So we have this girl. She works in an abortion clinic. She's been there for 8 years. She started out on her job, and finally in the first year, the first year of her being the director of the abortion clinic, after working there for 8 years, she finally gets to see an abortion happen, and it freaks her out, and she starts losing her shit in the bathroom, and then she kind of goes into, how did I get here? 8 years ago, she was at school. She was at college. She meets this Planned Parenthood thing. And she was like, well, I don't really have an opinion on it. I haven't really thought about abortion, but my family's pro-life, so I guess that makes me pro-life. And she was like, oh, we're just Planned Parenthood. We don't do a lot of abortions. We just want to give, birth control. And then if something happens, then we can give an abortion, in worst case scenarios. But our thing is to try to make it as less as possible. And she's like, okay, I'll go work for you. It's like, wait a minute, there's plenty of other jobs you can go at. You're clearly conflicted at least a little bit to work there. Why not just do something else instead of volunteering at an abortion clinic, escorting people back and forth? And then when she goes inside for the first time, she's like, okay, so this is what we do. We get people to go with their car into the abortion clinic without having to meet all the protesters outside who are terrible, awful people who are going to brainwash them into thinking that abortion is bad. Like, oh, okay. So the number on the button to get in the door is 222Y. And she was like, I can't remember that. I'm terrible with numbers. And she was like, oh, no, it spells baby.
Oh.
And they were like, I was just like, oh, what? Then she leaves and she comes out and she talks to one of the abortion protesters after her terrible day at work. And she just wanted to get the fuck out of there. And she was like, hey, I haven't seen you here before. What's your name? Oh, I'm Abby, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, and she was like, what do you think about abortions? And don't you know they do abortions here? And she's like, look, I had an abortion and it was no big deal. So wait a minute. So you have a girl who's, one, never thought about abortion, even though she's had one. Actually, she's had 2. We learned out later in the movie. She's had 2 abortions. She doesn't have a strong opinion of it, but she tends to be more pro-life. And she's also never seen an abortion, even though she's had 2, and one of which was a very traumatic experience for her. They
So that's a mighty fine script writing they did there.
This is
so what
14 minutes into the movie. And it keeps getting worse with the rest of the movie. Like, I got halfway through it. I want to finish.
So what part did Kevin Sorbo play in this movie?
Kevin Sorbo was not in the first half of the movie, as far as I can tell. But it's kind of weird.
You couldn't make it through?
No. It's kind of weird how all of these Christian films, like, everybody has the same house. Like, there's all like a really nice upper middle class house where all the furniture and all the walls are kind of like different various shades of beige, like dark beige green, beige brown, light beige, dark beige. Everything's beige with little cute little Pure One import knickknacks everywhere. Like, everybody has the same house in all of these movies. It's so funny. But anyways, yeah,
because it is the same house.
But I enjoyed lots of it just because it was so ridiculously written. It was so ridiculously poorly written, almost on par with The Last Jedi. But at least the Last Jedi, that Last Jedi too. But at least with the Rise of Skywalker, they tried to at least string something together where there's not obvious major plot issues, plot holes, and contradictions. They kind of made them a little bit more subtle. This one was just like they didn't care. They just did not care.
So my number 5 was Dumbo. And I remember when we were talking about Dumbo when the movie came out. The original Dumbo, while it is a Disney classic, not really that good.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's not really good. It's nothing like Fantasia. It's nothing like Cinderella or Snow White.
No.
And
it's a lot shorter than those films too, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. So they made Dumbo into a live action movie, and all of these Disney live action movies are Disney feeling uncomfortable about how their canon from the past stands out in today's society. So who's your main protagonist? Well, we got a guy with one arm who's having to learn how to struggle with not being the capable, manly man he thought of himself was, but he actually always is, even though he only has one arm. And he's got a daughter who loves the science. And she's being held down, not by anybody you actually see in the movie, but she's being held down by, sexism. And there's the brother who's also there. And then there's the multiracial, multi-ethnic circus, where everybody is some flavor of something different. And hey, look, the villain, and he's just barely a villain in the piece, he's an amalgamation of Thomas Edison and maybe even Walt Disney. Wink, wink. We understand that Walt Disney is somebody you think was an evil person. It's just awful. It's just awful. All those things that they bake into this movie. It is really awful.
I'm not going to lie. I was actually afraid to watch that.
So what's your number 5?
Number 5? Okay. So you remember a little film that we watched called Holmes and Watson, which was a remake.
Which was our worst film of last year.
Yeah. So it was a remake of something that was really good, which was, the Sherlock Holmes stories. This one was a remake of one of my favorite comedy films of all time, which was The Hustle. Which was a remake of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Can you imagine if they just took that movie and they said, hey, let's make it less funny and put a lot of cringy moments in there, and we'll just have Rebel Wilson being a slut. That's the movie.
That's the movie.
That's the movie. This was unwatchable.
Yeah.
When did you stop watching? When did you walk out?
The Hustle, when they did the retarded sister bit.
Oh, see, I didn't get that far. You have a higher tolerance than I stopped watching when they had sex in the airplane.
Yeah, I walked out, came back in a couple of times. Like I was building to leaving that movie, and I didn't put it on my worst list because there just really wasn't anything to grab onto that movie for making it a worst. It was just so poorly and sloppily put together.
Well, no. There's almost nothing as bad. There's not usually. I mean, you can make a movie that's terrible, and there can be some redeeming things about it, but there can't be anything redeeming about a comedy that's not funny. or a comedy that's so unfunny that it hurts. That was this. So what was yours?
For number 4.
Was that number 4?
Oh no, we're on number 4 now.
Okay, yeah.
So my number 4 was a little movie that involves gassing an ethnic minority as one of its key plot points, and I'm talking about Maleficent, Mistress of Evil.
Which I was going to watch, but I didn't have time.
So Maleficent was a movie I didn't like. That was a giant retelling of the Sleeping Beauty story to make, Maleficent the main character and make her redeemable. But the only way they did that was by having her get raped and by making every other character objectively worse than they were before. And Maleficent was only just a little bit better. Not a whole lot. So this movie was about Princess Aurora going off to get married and Maleficent going through post-traumatic stress disorder, and that leading to a war between the humans and the fairies. And the, gassing the fairies. No, YouTube, we're not talking about killing homosexuals. We're talking about, fairies, mythical creatures being gassed to death. That was a movie.
But it had Sonic the Hedgehog in it, so it couldn't be that bad.
It had a hedgehog. It wasn't Sonic.
It was Sonic. Fast. Well, I thought he could go fast. I thought he even rolled on the ground, even ran inside of a little ring.
No. So, what is your number 4?
Hellboy. I thought this movie was awful. I didn't think there was nothing redeeming about this movie whatsoever. It was just front to back. How did you find me? Twitter. What am I watching? What the fuck am I watching? Yeah, this was bad. There was nothing good about it. Everything was just awful.
It was just awful.
Yeah. What about you?
So number 3, and I struggled about where to place this movie.
How are you on number 3? Because I'm on. That wasn't my number 4. Oh, never mind. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
you're doing.
So my number 3, and I struggled about where to place this movie, was The Fanatic as my 3rd worst movie of the year.
Oh,
and I struggled with this because The Fanatic was in lots of places so bad it's good. But in lots of other places, like, let's listen to that Hot Lip Biscuit track. That was totally off the jam when I was a kid. In other places, like, bruh. And, John Travolta also likes to do really terrible movies. But he's done a string of them one after the other. And it's like, let's say I was somehow a fantastically famous movie actor. And I was at a point in my career where I'm not necessarily going to get something good in the theaters, but I can do something good on a streaming service. I would make sure that if I'm going to do a movie that's just complete and total garbage like this, I make sure I do something else good that people think of immediately before that. That was ultimately why I decided to put The Fanatic in at number 3.
Oh, okay.
So what is your 3rd worst movie of the year?
The Curse of La Llorona.
I wanted to see that, but then I heard it was terrible, and I didn't see it.
It's a movie that relies completely on jump scares. But here's the problem. The jump scares are like, they give you ample warning that they're coming. So they don't even work. And that's the movie. It's just one jump scare after the next. And our protagonist is an employee for CPS, which I can't empathize with as much. I see them as literally Hitler. So you have this like, this SS agent who's going around like kicking kids out of homes or whatever. And she comes across this house where this lady's like, no, don't let them out of that room. They're going to get hurt. And the kids have bruises all over them. So she's like, well, apparently you're the one doing this. And no, it turns out there's some spooky lady who does scary things, and you can see her coming towards you, and everybody just stands there with the stupid look on their face like, here she comes. She's coming for me right now. Oh, she disappeared. Turn the camera. I bet she's going to come right directly center of the camera. Oh, there she is. Standing there and then like she's there, you can see her, and like, oh, are you gonna scare me now? Okay, there you are. There's you go doing the jump scare, and then loud music, scream, cut to next scene, which they just do the exact same thing. Kids are standing there doing something. There she is. She does something really creepy, disappears. Camera pans over to where she's going to be. There she is. Then she screams. Then the kid screams. Loud noises. Next, that's the entire movie, the whole way through. You can see every scare that comes. There's nothing about it that's works except the creepy parts, but you can't have a movie about a bunch of creepy stuff. That's not
That's not how creepy movies work.
Yeah, it's not just like, okay, she moves weird and she looks like a bride. Okay.
So my number 2.
Maybe we should make this number 1 and then make the worst one number 2.
So my second worst movie of the year was Cats, and we mentioned all the different reasons, but the extra reasons that we didn't touch on earlier. Cats is a multi-billion-dollar franchise over decades, right?
Yep.
So somebody said, "Hey, let's make that. It'll probably get like old people who don't want to watch Star Wars."
Yeah.
So we have to have a whole bunch of big name actors in it. But if we have a whole bunch of big name actors in it, how are we going to be able to make it at a good price point that'll work? Oh, it's fine. We'll just save money somewhere else. Like, let's cut the CGI budget. But yeah. Everything's CGI in this movie. Everything is CGI in this movie. It's fine. Are we at least getting good singers to sing stuff? Well, 1 or 2, but they're going to sing the 1 or 2 songs everybody knows from Cats.
Yeah.
So we'll be fine. But everybody's singing in this. Shouldn't, we maybe cut down the cost of the actors to make sure we have actors who can, sing?
No.
Oh,
by the way, you know what else we should do? We should actually show Rebel Wilson eating cockroaches. We should show that.
And yeah. Look, if you're going to adapt Cats, you kind of sort of have to make a story.
But you can't.
I mean, you can make it a musical, but there kind of has to be more story than a Broadway musical.
Which there was.
Cats.
The Broadway musical, there was 0 story.
I mean, there was almost 0 story in this movie.
Right, but they added story to that. The whole McCavity thing, taking everybody away, that wasn't in the play. Just McCavity was just a bad cat, and he just showed up for 1 song, and that was it.
So what was your number 2?
My number 2 was The Fanatic. I didn't see this as a so bad it's good movie. I just saw it as a so bad it's terrible.
It was so bad it's good in parts.
Maybe there was a couple, but there was some major, like, there was one part where he said, like, he was like, oh yeah, like the Maniac was, that was a good movie, not the remake. The remake was terrible. And then like 5 seconds later was like, yeah, the remake was the best one. It's like, guys.
No, Jim, that is not the worst line from this movie.
Oh, I have to go poo.
I can't talk long. I have to go poop.
That was our opening line by our protagonist in this film. This is a thing that happened in a movie that was in theaters, like 2 of them, but it was in theaters.
So, my worst movie of the year pulls off almost the Neil Breenism. It has a star who also wrote the movie, who also directed the movie, and was the executive producer of the movie.
Oh,
Charlie's Angels.
Oh, I did not see that. So,
and the reason it is so bad is Charlie's Angels was barely a brand. It had 2 good movies, and it had 2 good movies by not taking itself seriously. So instead of being like any successful women's action franchise, this movie decided to take itself seriously. Instead of being like any action franchise right now, it decided to film itself like a 1970s or 80s action franchise. Every single decision in the movie was wrong.
Yep.
The casting was underwhelming, and the casting was underwhelming because nobody wanted to work on this piece of garbage movie. She couldn't find a director, so she directed it herself. Nobody wanted to direct the script she wrote, so she had to produce it herself. And I'm guessing the studios did this as some sort of mind game to basically burn her and force her into making some other movie that they really want.
Mm. Can't be worse than the movie that's number 1 on my list, that's for sure.
What's your number 1 piece of number 2?
The Haunting of Sharon Tate.
Oh, I have not seen it. I've heard it is really atrocious.
This movie is bad on every single front. All of the other movies, like I can talk about some good aspects of the movie, right? Like Hellboy, some interesting effects that happened. Curse of La Llorona, there was some interesting like the way they kind of did like the vintage 70s feel was kind of interesting. Some of the special effects was pretty interesting. The Fanatic, there was some funny moments, unintentionally funny moments. Star Wars The Last Jedi had some great CGI.
Don't you mean Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, Rise of Skywalker, whatever. It's all just a gumbled mess for me. The movie's just a mess. Unplanned, there was some unintentionally funny moments. Cats,
like I've
entertaining
never seen
because it was so bad.
Like I've never seen an abortion, even though I've had 2, one of which was really traumatic for me.
Yeah, like all of these things, I could at least pick out something that's good about this. There is nothing good about this. The cinematography, like the shots, you're just wondering, like, what the fuck am I looking at? Like, why are you even filming this? The way it was edited was terrible. Everybody's performance was awful. The direction was terrible. The casting was awful. Hilary Duff was like going in and out of her accent the whole movie. Like one moment she would be talking like her normal self, the next moment she'd be talking like Sharon Tate. It was completely disrespectful to Sharon Tate. The story was basically like, hey, Sharon Tate was psychic and she could actually she could smell that things were going to happen. Like she knew that there was going to be people coming to murder her. And then she was starting to go crazy, and everybody was like, Sharon, you're crazy.
But you know what was so great about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? They had Sharon Tate just be a nice person, really cute,
and
that everybody loved.
And showed her feet.
And showed her feet, because it's Quentin Tarantino movie. I mean, I can understand where Quentin's coming from with that, but, you know.
Feet's not my thing.
But, yeah.
Everything about it was just terrible, and her visions, her psychic visions of the murders was actually the murders, and so they reenacted the murders. Except to make it even worse, they kind of portrayed the Manson family as the way they wanted to be portrayed, as scary, evil people, which is not what they were like in real life. In real life, they were just kind of stupid hippies, scrawny. Vegan losers who just happened to pull off a couple of murders. Like everything about it was completely disrespectful. Everything about it was just completely terrible. I mean, even down to like them going into their house, the gate in front of their house was, you could tell, was just done by like some people off view, like pulling the gate forward, you know. And it was just like some gate that they bought at Home Depot for like $10. Like a chain link fence. This is a movie that everything about it was just, what are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? And then and then on top of it all, right before like the murders start to happen, she starts going into labor. Oh, she's gonna have her baby, right? Nope. She just stops being in labor and then goes throughout the rest of the movie, and they never mention it again. She still has her baby.
That is really gross. That is really gross.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Everything about it, like continuity issues. There was plot holes. There was insulting depictions of what happened to Sharon Tate. The family of the Sharon Tate estate was also very upset about this film being made. All the film critics were upset about it being made, but for completely other reasons. Everything about it was bad. I can't think of one good thing about this movie. Not one.
Yeah.
And it took a lot to beat The Fanatic, but they did it. And it's kind of interesting because we had 2 movies about Sharon Tate, 2 Adam Sandler films. They both ended up on both my lists, good and bad.
Yeah. So let's talk about the next quarter for movies.
Oh.
We're going to talk about January through March. So here's some movies that I'm thinking about seeing. Like a Boss, that's going to be coming out next week. Selma Hayek, Tiffany Haddish, and Rose Byrne. It's about, women fighting over business. Seems like it's going to be a good movie. Some point I'm going to want to cram in Underwater because it's a underwater horror movie. That seems like it's going to be fun. Bad Boys for Life. The Gentleman also seems like it's going to be fun. Matthew McConaughey, and a big stretch for him playing a marijuana dealer.
Well, it's going to be a Guy Ritchie film, so it can't be too bad.
Exactly.
What was the one with not Denzel Washington? Jamie Foxx. He kind of looks like a Denzel Washington character, though.
Yeah, no.
Where he's guilty, or they found him guilty of a murder, and he wasn't there.
Yeah, but that one is the last. No, it's not that one.
They had some early showings this year, but they didn't have any in my area. So
yeah, it's
technically
not
a 2020 movie.
Not slated to be coming out. So what are you looking forward to for January?
So far, that's it. It's just the that one, and even that one I'm kind of skeptical about because it kind of looks like one of those movies that they're pitching like, oh, this could be Oscar bait, but then it's like, why are you releasing it in January? It's like something's not wrong
because it's the best movie that's come out this year. Remember that, critic? Remember that? So in February, we got a guaranteed piece of trash. My lock for one of the worst movies of next year: Birds of Prey and the Fabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of that title. The title alone tells me it's not going to be good. Something that is, I think, going to be good, that's going to be very popular, is Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, I think that actually might be good. Surprisingly.
Something that I think will have legs, and since it's an A24 movie, it's probably going to be low-key, is Fantasy Island.
Wait. Are you saying that there's going to be a CG character that says meow that's actually going to be good?
Yeah, it's kind of shocking, I know.
Meow.
So they have Impractical Jokers, the movie. I'm probably not going to see that. And
pass.
They have a Invisible Man horror movie I'm also going to pass on. So there's really only 2 good movies that look like they're coming out in February.
Oh, they're trying to kick back the Dark Universe thing, aren't they?
No, it's a different Invisible Man.
Oh, Johnny Depp's not playing him?
Johnny Depp's not playing him, no.
Because I know they are trying to kick it off again. This will be their attempt number 3. Starting the Dark Universe. The first one was Dracula Unchained. Then it was
the Frankenstein.
Mummy. No, that was a Mummy.
Well, they tried to do it with the Frankenstein movie.
Not really. It was actually Dracula.
So March, we have a Ben Affleck movie where he plays a drunk guy from New England who becomes a high school basketball coach. One of those things is probably a stretch for him. I wonder which one.
Yeah.
Currently, Bloodshot is scheduled for March. Currently. We have the Dumb Spy Kid movie with Batista in March, which I think is just going to be kind of terrible. Batista needs a better agent because he can actually act. A Quiet Place 2 is coming up. Do you have any interest in seeing a second Quiet Place
I haven't
movie?
seen the first one. I need to check that out. I keep hearing good things, so I don't know. We'll see.
And then there's Mulan at the end of March.
That looks terrible. I saw trailers for that. That looks bad.
I mean, there are Chinese productions that have done that exact same story but better.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I just watch that?
Yeah.
So that's the next 3 months of films, and something Jim and I are going to do, and we're going to talk about a little bit more later off the show camera, is we're going to pick a movie that has a really solid director in it and try to do like some retro reviews of the director's body of work, so that we can then go into their new movie and like feed all of that context into it.
Yeah. So we need to pick a good one that's coming out. Well, we got that Tenet. We could do Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, that looks like that's gonna be good.
And I'm down to watch the Batman movies again. That's for sure. Any excuse to watch them again, I'm great. Because those were big films.
They were.
For you. I set it up. You didn't even see it. It's like alley-oop. Wait, what are we doing? We're playing basketball. Guy.
Oh, mercy. So that's recording in progress, everybody. So now time to let things play out. And worms.
Hail worms.
Hail worms.